Hey everyone, welcome to today's STEM topic. So today we're going to actually probably talk more about the engineering side of this, okay? And I know that a lot of people are like, well, this probably isn't more engineering related, but I'm going to be upfront with you, is that I like to think that engineers have to do kind of a broad spectrum of things. Sometimes they have to do a little bit of business understanding to try to manipulate the system so that they get the money for what they need, as well as designing and building things that are related. So, this is more kind of the business side of the engineering world, if you will, is the way I look at it. So, today's episode, we're going to talk about user requirement specifications. And yes, there are several other types of requirement specifications that exist out there, depending on what you're working on, whether it be software, whether it be computers, whether it be machines, or any of that. So, from a manufacturing perspective, we have a lot that deals with the user side of it. So, what is the user requirement specification? Just as a high-level understanding of this, is these are the requirements of the piece of equipment that we're working on. This is how the machine will operate, some of the features that will be installed with the machine, so and some of the like along the way. So some of the ideas for this might include like, well, we're going to have an HMI. Well, we're going to specify the size. Okay, we're going to specify the size, the brand, the hardware that is within it. Okay, maybe the software as well. And then probably a revision of it. So we'll specify things like the HMI. We might specify the PLC as well. And that's some of the electrical control side of it, and those will be within our user requirement specification. And depending on your application, it could be as simple as just a quick Excel spreadsheet listing down everything that's your requirement, a little bit of detail and a description with it, and then that's passed off to the vendor so that the vendor has an understanding of what to do. Or it could be as in-depth as, this shall have this piece of equipment, this shall have this shall operate this direct way. And the like, and that might be in a Word document with a lot of other detail about your company. It all depends on A, your company standard, B, how you want to develop it, and C, the vendor you're working with, actually. It really does kind of matter. If you're working with a big top-notch vendor that really has a lot of details and wants that kind of protection and all of that, they're going to demand you do something like that. But if they're just kind of a little podunk vendor working on a little podunk piece of equipment, just a small little piece of equipment, then pretty much just putting it down in an Excel spreadsheet is probably just good enough for them. So, kind of understanding your application. I personally, just for reference, and this is a suggestion to everyone, is that I like to get in the habit of writing it as detailed and as in-depth as possible so that when I have the big piece of equipment that I have to work on, I've already practiced to write it up really well. And as the person on the other end of it, I want to have a detailed list that I can go off of and say, okay, yep, we can or can't do this, so can we re-amend this or whatever. I like to have that kind of information. I like to give that feedback, and I like that feedback back. So just kind of an understanding there. We're going to talk about the mechanics of the piece of equipment as well. So coming from a person that really focuses on the electrical side, we also need to know the mechanics. With the PLC as well, we're going to need to know the power of the system, and that needs to also be in there. We also need to understand, what does our safety look like? So we'll need to do an RA, or a risk assessment, on that. So with the safety, you're going to have the vendor do the risk assessment with that. And we can talk about that as another STEM topic at a later time. But we really need to focus on that because that's really becoming a critical thing in the world that we're living in today, is safety, 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 and the risk assessment that goes with it. You can't have good safety without having the risk assessment. They go hand in hand. And that should definitely be included in your user requirement specification. Along with that might be your operations. Okay? And then with that is also the shutdown. Now, I like to keep the shutdown over here with this because to my mind, the safety and the shutdown go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other, because if I press the emergency stop for a shutdown, I need to know that it's going to shut in a safe position, not in a failed position where it's going to continue running. So shutdown and safety go hand in hand once again. Those are something that you're going to have in there. You're also going to put in there recovery from shutdown. Okay? Recovery from that shutdown. So when I press the emergency stop, I pull that out. What do I have to do to recover that? And when I press, let's say we hit a power on kind of button as a traditional old school system. We press the power on button, it regens and starts back up. What's it going to do during its recovery cycle? Is there a risk that somebody could get hurt? Again, all of that needs to be tied together, and we need to have a risk assessment that analyzes all of that. With that too, we might put in like guarding. Okay? And again, all of that's tied together, and we really focus on safety. One thing you'll discover about me in this channel is we really like to focus on safety a lot. A lot. Operations. We kind of briefly put it on the board, but we didn't really talk about it. It's the operations of, if I do this, then this will happen. If the operator does this, then this will occur. If the operator presses stop, then the machine will stop within X amount of time frame. If the operator presses start, the machine will initiate the start sequence within X amount of time frame. You might even put in there some other standards of like programming standards. Okay? You might put like a programming standard kind of thing, and I know that's not real well to be read, but the programming standard might say something along the lines of, you will not use a sequencer bit, but you will use something like a move equals or a math function that will operate as the sequencer. Or you might say, no, you're not doing that. That's convoluted and messed up. You will use only a sequencer type of function. There will be no bit shifts. There may be only bit shifts. You're not allowed to use a latching. That's one I've actually seen a lot of. And in fact, I really hold on to that dearly too, is that latching should be very, very limited within your program, of a PLC program, that is. So a latch on, latch off, and it should be within 5 rungs of each other. So just kind of a heads up there on that. So something along the lines of programming. You might even have a standard from your organization that you have developed. Again, another video, a later date we might talk about. But you might have a standard that's developed for you. And from that standard, you could just dump the standard in here. So you might have standard ABC 123.3, and that's the standard you're going to reference that's part of your user requirement specification. And then when you hand this user requirement specification off to the vendor so that they understand what they're working on and doing, you need to also deliver that piece of material to them as well. You might also say that the risk assessment has to be done in accordance with standard, we'll just say DEF 345. And that standard also has to be delivered to the vendor. So anytime you put a standard within the user requirement specifications, unless it's like an ANSI standard or a federal code standard or something that's already readily available to them outside of your organization, you need to deliver the standard of your organization to that vendor. Those other ones, they can purchase those. They can find those on their own. If they ask for it, you might release that information to them so that they have that, but that's more on them to figure that out as the independent vendor. But the standard that is dedicated to your company and organization, you have to release that to them. This is another reason why before you ever got to the user requirement specification, you might sign an NDA with them. And what is an NDA? A non-disclosure agreement. And we'll talk about that in another STEM topic at a later date. So, that's the user requirement specification. Again, high-level overview. There's a lot of other details that go into this. I highly encourage you to look something up like this or talk to some quality people within your organization or maybe some other engineers that have had to work on this. Particularly a lot of times in FDA or other federally regulated organizations. So like there's USDA organizations, so like food manufacturers, FDA, again, food and drug types of things. Even in the power industry, you might have like nuclear power has to be under the NRC. So there's other regulatory bodies that exist out there that they're going to be looking for stuff like this. So just pay attention that your quality people are probably going to know what this is. So go talk to quality about this and ask them, can you help me write this or can you help me develop this? I'm sure they're more than willing to sit down with you and help you out with that. So, again, high-level overview, user requirement specifications, STEM topic of the day. Thanks for watching.